So here we have a malicious Word document which contains macro code. And as we may know, cyber attacks are typically multi-staged, meaning that the malicious activity is performed in different steps or stages. This methodology allows attackers to deploy capabilities progressively to avoid detections and protect themselves from burning or wasting their more sophisticated techniques in early stages of an attack, or simply to decide which payload would be more convenient in the victim's system after initial compromise. In the overview section, we are highlighting the most relevant aspects of the conducted analysis, and we can dive deeper navigating through the details section of the report later on. So in this analysis, we, for example, highlight some interesting elements from the macro code itself, which already hints some information about the sample's behavior. If we keep navigating through the indicators, we'll see another very relevant indicator. This one points the fact that the document is explicitly asking the user to enable macros. Additionally, this one also flags the fact that the sample is reaching an online service to discover its own IP address, which is the victim's IP address. This is especially relevant as many malware often tries to condition its execution based on the geolocation of the victim, which can be figured out based on the public IP address. Now, thanks to our emulation, we are able to skip this geofencing check by tricking the sample and allowing the sample to continue its execution to the next stage instead of early exiting. Of course, we have some indicators specifically coming from the emulation activity, but let's look at the actual emulation data. First, we see the emulation event tree, where we see the file being open. Then we see the network lookup for the IP lookup. We also observe two different PowerShell processes, and one of them performing another network request and also saving some file. If we go into the details of the emulation events, we see that this one would be the event that triggered the automatic execution. We see some variables being compared with the document name. So the sample is comparing the document name with this value. And we see many other different variable comparison. In this case, we clearly see that the sample is trying to find some security vendor keywords in this content, very likely to perform some other defense evasion steps. But we finally see that there is a shell object being created and a PowerShell line being executed. From this line, we see that there's a URL request from which it is retrieving a file, saving it into a temporary file, and immediately executing it. So finally, something also interesting to mention is that all of the elements that we extracted during the whole static and dynamic analysis will be individually extracted, and specific and individual lookups will be performed in each of the different items. So for example, we see that the URL that was reached by the PowerShell was flagged as malicious during our reputation lookups. We see also hashes, which most likely belong to the extracted files. In this case, we would list and download the file that was reached through the HTTP request. We can also see the content. We can also download them. But of course, they should also be listed here, and the reputation lookup should also be performed. So this is how we can see that the sample tried to base its execution depending on the geolocation, and that we avoid such check and obtained the whole information from the sample that was analyzed.